Emma Blackwood stared at the key in her palm, small, brass, and inexplicably heavy. The New Orleans humidity clung to her skin as she stood before the weathered Victorian house on Prytania Street that her great-grandmother had left her. 3 months ago, Emma had been a struggling photographer in Boston with mounting student debt. Now, she was the reluctant owner of a historic home in the Garden District, courtesy of a great-grandmother she'd never met. "It needs work," the attorney, Mr. Thibodeau, said beside her, his New Orleans drawl stretching the words. "But it's worth a small fortune. Amelia insisted you inherit it despite never meeting you." "Why me?" Emma asked, not for the first time. "I didn't even know she existed until your letter," Mr. Thibodeau shrugged. "Family estrangement. Your grandmother, Amelia's daughter, left New Orleans in 1957 and never returned. Amelia was difficult, but she was adamant the house stay in the family." Emma surveyed the property. Wrought iron fencing surrounded a garden where weeds had overtaken what once might have been beautiful. The house itself stood 3 stories tall, with a wide gallery porch and ornate gingerbread trim that had seen better days. "There's one condition," Mr. Thibodeau continued, pulling an envelope from his briefcase. "Amelia left this for you. She requested you read it alone, in the house, before deciding whether to keep or sell the property." Emma accepted the envelope. Her name was written in shaky cursive across the front. "The utilities are on," Mr. Thibodeau said. "I'll leave you to it. Call my office when you've decided." After he left, Emma hesitated before climbing the steps. The wood creaked beneath her feet as she approached the front door. The key turned with surprising ease in the lock. Inside, the air was stale but cooler. Sheets draped the furniture like ghosts, and dust motes danced in the sunlight streaming through the windows. Emma wandered through the downstairs rooms, a formal parlor, dining room, library and kitchen, all furnished with antiques beneath their protective coverings. In the library, Emma settled into a chair after removing its sheet and opened the envelope with trembling fingers. "My dear Emma, you don't know me, but I have watched you from afar. Your photography shows a gift for seeing what others miss. You will need that gift in this house. There are photographs in the attic studio that require your attention. Study them carefully. What you discover will determine whether you stay or go. But be warned, once you see, you cannot unsee. Your great-grandmother, Amelia Blackwood." Emma read the letter twice, a chill crawling up her spine despite the heat. What could possibly be in those photographs? And how had Amelia known about her photography? As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the house, Emma found herself climbing the stairs to the 3rd floor, drawn by curiosity and something else, a strange sense of inevitability, as if she had been meant to come here all along. The attic stairs creaked with each step, the wood worn smooth by generations of feet. Emma's flashlight beam cut through the gloom, revealing a space unlike the rest of the house. While the rooms below were formal and traditional, the attic had been converted into a photographer's studio and darkroom. Emma found the light switch, and antique bulbs flickered to life, casting a warm glow over the space. A large table dominated the center, surrounded by shelves filled with equipment, both ancient and surprisingly modern. In one corner stood a digital scanner that couldn't be more than 5 years old. Great-Grandma Amelia was a photographer? Emma whispered to herself, running her fingers over an old Leica camera that probably belonged in a museum. Against the far wall stood a massive oak cabinet with dozens of small drawers. Each was meticulously labeled, with dates spanning from the 1890s to just last year. Emma pulled open a drawer marked 1918 and found it filled with carefully preserved negatives and prints. One envelope, larger than the others, was marked Fontaine Duchesne Wedding, June 15, 1918. Emma carefully extracted a series of photographs showing a lavish Garden District wedding. The images were remarkably preserved and showed a handsome couple surrounded by elegantly dressed guests on the lawn of what appeared to be this very house. Emma carried the photos to the scanning station and began digitizing them. As each high-resolution image appeared on the monitor, she found herself admiring the photographer's skill. The composition was masterful, the moments captured perfectly. The final photograph showed the entire wedding party posed on the front steps of the house. 37 people stared back at the camera, frozen in time. Emma zoomed in to examine the details of the bride's intricate lace gown, when something at the edge of the frame caught her eye. In the back row, partially obscured by another guest, stood a figure in a dark suit. Unlike the others, whose faces were clearly visible, this person's face was absent, not blurred or shadowed, but smooth and featureless, as if someone had erased it. "Photographic anomaly," Emma murmured. Though a sense of unease settled over her, she zoomed in further, increasing the resolution. The figure's face remained blank, no eyes, no mouth, nothing but a pale oval beneath a fashionable hat. Emma checked the negative, holding it up to the light. The anomaly was there too, not a flaw in the print, but captured in the original exposure. Her photographer's instinct told her this wasn't a simple case of motion blur or exposure error. This was something else entirely. Emma returned to the cabinet and pulled open more drawers, selecting photographs at random: a 1935 Mardi Gras ball, a 1962 garden party, a 1989 funeral. In each collection, she found at least one image containing a figure with no face, always positioned at the edges, almost unnoticeable, unless you were looking for it. The most recent envelope was dated just 4 months ago, Amelia's 98th birthday. With shaking hands, Emma opened it and found a single photograph of an elderly woman sitting in the library downstairs. Her great-grandmother, she presumed. Amelia stared directly at the camera with piercing blue eyes that matched Emma's own, and there, reflected in the mirror behind her, stood a faceless figure. Emma dropped the photograph as if it had burned her fingers. The sun had fully set now, and the old house had grown silent, except for the occasional settling of wood and the distant sound of traffic on St. Charles Avenue. That's when Emma heard the floorboard creak on the stairs leading to the attic. Emma froze, her breath caught in her throat. The footstep didn't repeat, but she couldn't shake the certainty that someone, or something, was climbing the attic stairs. She grabbed her phone, cursing the poor reception as she tried to dial Mr. Thibodeau's number. The call wouldn't connect. Moving quietly, Emma gathered the photographs and slipped them into her bag. Whatever was happening in this house, she wasn't staying to find out. The staircase light flickered, then went out. "Hello," Emma called, immediately regretting breaking the silence. "Is someone there?" No answer came, but the temperature in the attic plummeted. Emma's breath formed visible clouds in the suddenly frigid air. The photography equipment began to rattle, subtle at first, then violently enough that the old Leica camera crashed to the floor. Emma lunged for the stairs, but halfway down she collided with something solid yet invisible. The air felt thick, resistant, like pushing through gelatin. A whisper brushed against her ear, indistinct words, in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Panic propelled her forward. She burst through the invisible barrier and raced down to the second floor, not stopping until she reached the master bedroom. Emma slammed the door shut and leaned against it, gasping for breath. The room was untouched, preserved like a museum exhibit. A 4-poster bed dominated the space, its canopy draped with faded silk. On the vanity sat silver-backed brushes and perfume bottles, arranged as if their owner might return any moment to use them. Emma's gaze fell on a leather-bound journal lying on the nightstand. The cover was embossed with the initials A.B., Amelia Blackwood. Her hands still shaking, Emma opened the journal and began to read. April 3rd, 1917. It followed the Fontaine boy home from the war today. I saw it through my lens, the absence where a face should be. He doesn't know it's there, trailing him like a shadow. None of them ever do. But I see it. I always see it. June 15th, 1918. It was at the Fontaine-Duchesne wedding. standing among the guests as if it belonged. I captured it in my photograph, evidence, proof that I'm not mad. 3 days later, the bride's father was found dead in his study. They called it a heart attack. I know better. Entry after entry documented Amelia's observations of the faceless entity she called the Witness. According to her journal, it appeared before tragedy struck. Deaths, accidents, fires, financial ruin, sometimes days before, sometimes hours. December 24th, 1957. Margaret is leaving tomorrow, taking my granddaughter with her. She says I'm unstable, that my obsession with the Witness has consumed me. She doesn't understand. I'm trying to protect them. The Witness has been watching Margaret's husband. I tried to warn her. The next entry was dated 2 weeks later, January 9th, 1958. The telegram came today. Train derailment in Georgia. Robert didn't survive. Margaret will never forgive me for not stopping them from leaving, but how could I have known the Witness would follow them? Emma's grandmother had died when Emma was just a child. She'd never known her grandfather had died in a train accident, or that her grandmother had been estranged from her own mother. The journal entries continued sporadically through the decades, each documenting appearances of the Witness and the tragedies that followed. Amelia had spent her life photographing New Orleans society, apparently for the sole purpose of tracking this entity. The final entry was dated just days before Amelia's death, March 12th, 2023. I've seen it in my mirror every night this week. My time is coming. I've made arrangements with Thibodeau. The house and my research will go to Emma. I've watched her work. She has the gift. She'll see what others can't. Perhaps she'll succeed where I've failed. The Witness isn't evil. It doesn't cause the tragedies it precedes. I believe it's trying to communicate something, a warning perhaps, or a choice. Emma closed the journal, her mind reeling. Was her great-grandmother mentally ill, or had she actually been documenting something supernatural? The photographs upstairs showed something inexplicable, but it could be tricks of light, double exposures, or simple manipulation. As if in answer to her thoughts, the temperature in the bedroom plummeted. The mirror on the vanity began to fog, and in its surface a handprint appeared, pressed from the other side of the glass. Emma backed away from the vanity, clutching the journal to her chest. The handprint on the mirror remained, impossibly clear against the fog. As she watched, it slowly dragged downward, leaving 5 trails in the condensation. "What do you want?" Emma whispered, surprising herself with her boldness. The room seemed to inhale, the air pressure changing so suddenly that her ears popped. The chandelier swayed gently, though there was no breeze. Emma thought of the photographs upstairs, of the faceless figure that had appeared throughout the decades. According to Amelia's journal, the entity she called the Witness appeared before tragedies, deaths, accidents, disasters. "Are you warning me?" Emma asked the empty room. The temperature normalized so abruptly that Emma gasped. The fog on the mirror evaporated, taking the handprint with it. But as Emma stared at her reflection, she noticed something strange about the doorway behind her. A distortion in the air, like heat rising from pavement. Emma raised her phone and took a photograph. When she checked the image, her blood ran cold. Standing in the doorway was the faceless figure from the wedding photo, now in her house, in her time. "I see you," Emma said, her voice stronger than she felt. "What are you trying to tell me?" The figure remained motionless. Emma took another photo, then another. In each image, the entity was closer, though she hadn't seen it move. In the final photo, it stood directly behind her, a hand outstretched toward her shoulder. Emma spun around, but the doorway was empty. When she turned back to the mirror, her reflection was alone. Heart pounding, Emma returned to the attic, driven by a compulsion she couldn't explain. The photographs she'd examined earlier were scattered across the table where she'd left them in her haste to escape. With new purpose, Emma began to organize them chronologically, creating a timeline of the Witness's appearances. Each photograph preceded a documented tragedy, sometimes by days, sometimes by mere hours. The pattern was undeniable. The witness wasn't causing these events. It was present for them, observing, witnessing, just as Amelia had named it. As dawn broke over New Orleans, Emma made a decision. She would not run from this house or its secrets. Whatever connection her family had to this entity, she would understand it. She would finish what Amelia had started. Emma set up her digital camera on a tripod, pointing it at the empty chair across from her. She started recording, the red light blinking steadily in the dim attic. "I know you're here," Emma said to the empty room. "I can see you just like Amelia could. I want to understand what you're trying to communicate." For several minutes, nothing happened. Then the temperature dropped again. On her camera's display screen, Emma watched as the chair across from her became occupied by the faceless figure, though to her naked eye it remained empty. "Are you here to warn me?" Emma asked. "Is something going to happen?" The figure in the display tilted its head, an eerily human gesture despite its blank face. It raised a hand, pointing not at Emma, but past her, toward the window overlooking Prytania Street. Emma turned to look. Outside, a storm was gathering, dark clouds rolling in from the Gulf. As she watched, lightning illuminated the sky, and in that flash, Emma saw what the witness was pointing to, a massive oak branch hanging precariously over the power lines leading to the house. In that moment, Emma understood. She grabbed her phone and dialed Mr. Thibodeau's number, which connected this time. "Miss Blackwood, have you made a decision about the property?" he answered. "Mr. Thibodeau, there's a dangerous branch about to fall on the power lines outside the house. Can you send someone immediately?" 20 minutes later, utility workers were removing the branch, which, as one worker commented, would have caused a fire for sure when it came down in this storm. Back in the attic, Emma checked her camera's footage. The figure was gone, but a message had appeared in the condensation on the attic window. "Thank you." The storm passed, leaving behind a freshly washed New Orleans that gleamed in the afternoon sun. Emma sat on the gallery porch, nursing a cup of coffee as she scrolled through the photographs on her laptop. The near miss with the oak branch had convinced her that whatever was happening in this house wasn't her imagination. The witness was real, and somehow she and Amelia shared the ability to see it. Emma had spent the morning researching her family history. Amelia had been born in 1925 to a prominent New Orleans family. Her father, Edmund Blackwood, had been a respected judge. Her mother, Catherine, a society hostess. But it was Amelia's grandmother, Emma's great-great-great-grandmother, who caught her attention. Josephine Blackwood had been a spiritualist in the late 1800s, renowned for her ability to communicate with the dead. In that era of seances and spirit photography, Josephine had made quite a name for herself. According to newspaper clippings Emma found online, Josephine claimed to have been born with the veil, a caul over her face at birth, traditionally believed to grant second sight. Had this gift been passed down through the women in her family? Is that why Amelia had been able to see the witness, and now Emma could too? Emma's phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Mr. Thibodeau. "Miss Blackwood, I wanted to thank you again for alerting us to that branch. The utility company said it would have caused significant damage when it fell." "Just lucky timing," Emma said, not wanting to explain the truth. "Perhaps. There's another matter I wanted to discuss. In cataloguing your great-grandmother's effects, we discovered a safety deposit box at Gulf National Bank. As her heir, you're entitled to its contents. Would tomorrow morning be convenient to meet at the bank?" Emma agreed, curious about what else Amelia might have left behind. After hanging up, she returned to her exploration of the house. The second-floor hallway was lined with family portraits, stern-faced men and women dating back to the Civil War era. At the end hung a portrait of a woman with familiar blue eyes, dressed in the fashion of the 1890s. The plaque beneath it read, "Josephine Blackwood, 1858-1923. As Emma studied her ancestor's face, she noticed something in the background of the painting. A mirror, and in its reflection the suggestion of a figure standing behind Josephine. The artist had painted it as little more than a shadow, but Emma recognized the shape. "It's been with our family for generations," she whispered. That night, Emma dreamed of Josephine. They sat together in the parlor downstairs, though it was furnished as it would have been in the 1890s. "You see it too," Josephine said without preamble, pouring tea from a silver service. "The witness," Emma confirmed. What is it?" Josephine smiled sadly. "Not what, but who. It's tied to our family, to our gift. We see what others can't, the thin places where worlds touch. But why does it appear before tragedies? It tries to warn us. It exists outside of time as we understand it. It sees what's coming and tries to show us. Why doesn't it just tell us? It can't speak. It has no face, no voice. It can only be present, hoping we understand." Emma woke with the dawn, Josephine's words echoing in her mind. The dream had felt more like a visitation than a product of her subconscious. At the bank, Mr. Thibodeau presented her with a small box containing several items: a vintage Leica lens, a stack of letters tied with faded ribbon, and a velvet pouch. Inside the pouch, Emma found an unusual pendant, a silver eye set with a blue stone that matched her own eye color. "Amelia wore this always," Mr. Thibodeau commented. "I never saw her without it." The letters were correspondence between Amelia and various paranormal researchers, most dating from the 1960s and 70s. In them, Amelia cautiously described her experiences with the witness, never revealing too much, but clearly seeking answers. One letter, from a Dr. Eleanor Reed of Duke University's Parapsychology Department, dated 1972, stood out. "Dear Mrs. Blackwood, your descriptions of the entity you call the witness align with certain theoretical models of non-local consciousness. The fact that it appears only in photographs initially and can only be seen by those with your particular sensitivity suggests it exists on a different frequency, so to speak, from our normal perception. Your theory that it is trying to communicate warnings is fascinating. Have you considered that your family's gift might be more than just the ability to see this entity? Perhaps you are meant to act as intermediaries or interpreters. I would very much like to visit New Orleans to discuss this further." The letter went on, but Emma's attention was caught by the word intermediaries. Was that what she and Amelia were supposed to be? Not just observers of the witness, but translators of its warnings. Emma fastened the pendant around her neck, feeling an immediate sense of rightness as it settled against her skin. Whatever connection her family had to the witness, she was part of it now. 2 weeks had passed since Emma's arrival in New Orleans, and she had settled into a strange new routine. Each morning, she photographed the house and grounds, looking for signs of the witness. Each evening, she reviewed Amelia's journals, piecing together the entity's patterns and purpose. The witness had appeared twice more, once in a photograph of the French Quarter, where Emma later learned a balcony had collapsed, and once in the background of a sunset shot of the Mississippi River, 3 hours before a tugboat collision. Emma had begun to understand what Dr. Reed had meant about being an intermediary. The witness couldn't prevent tragedies directly, but through Emma it could try to mitigate them. After seeing the witness in her river photograph, Emma had called the Coast Guard with a vague warning about boat traffic near the Algiers point. They dismissed her, but she'd tried. Mr. Thibodeau had become an unexpected ally. After Emma had successfully predicted a gas leak in the building next to his office, thanks to the witness appearing in a photograph she'd taken of the street, he'd stopped questioning her hunches and started acting on them. My mother believed in the sight. He'd confessed over beignets at Café du Monde, said her grandmother could see things before they happened. I never put much stock in it until now. Emma had converted part of the parlor into a gallery to display both Amelia's historical photographs and her own new work. The renovation had given her purpose, a way to honor her great-grandmother's legacy while forging her own path. Tonight was the opening reception, a small gathering of local photographers, historians and art collectors that Mr. Thibodeau had helped organize. Emma had titled the exhibition Witnesses, New Orleans Through Time, a private nod to the entity that connected her to Amelia. As guests filtered in, Emma felt a surge of pride. The black and white photographs, spanning over a century, told the story of a city that had endured hurricanes, floods, war, and change. Each image captured a moment of beauty or significance, though only Emma knew that some also contained warnings. "This collection is remarkable," said a tall man with salt and pepper hair, studying a photograph of the 1918 wedding. "The continuity between your great-grandmother's work and yours is striking." Emma read his name tag, Dr. James Merritt, Historic New Orleans Collection. "Thank you," Emma replied. "I feel a strong connection to her work." "I'm particularly interested in this wedding photo," Dr. Merritt continued. "The Fontaine-Duchesne wedding was quite the society event. Tragic about the bride's father, though." "Yes, he died shortly after," Emma said, watching Dr. Merritt's expression carefully. "Heart attack, if I recall my research correctly." "But there were rumors." "What kind of rumors?" Emma asked, her interest piqued. "Well," Dr. Merritt lowered his voice, "some said Judge Fontaine had been involved in some questionable legal decisions. Corruption was rampant in that era. There were whispers that his heart attack might have been assisted." Emma examined the wedding photograph with new eyes. The witness stood near Judge Fontaine in the image. Had it been trying to warn of murder, not just a natural death? As the evening progressed, Emma mingled with guests, many of whom shared stories about old New Orleans that added context to Amelia's photographs. The city's history was layered with beauty and darkness, triumph and tragedy, much like her family's connection to the witness. Near the end of the reception, as guests were leaving, Emma noticed a woman lingering by a photograph from 1957, the last image Amelia had taken of her daughter Margaret before she left New Orleans. The woman was elderly, elegantly dressed, with a bearing that spoke of old money and older traditions. As Emma approached, she turned, revealing eyes the same striking blue as Emma's own. "You must be Emma," the woman said, her voice carrying the refined accent of New Orleans aristocracy. "I'm Eleanor Duchesne. Your grandmother Margaret was my cousin." Emma felt a jolt of surprise. "You knew my grandmother?" "We were close as children before she left. I tried to keep in touch, but she wanted nothing to do with New Orleans after what happened with your great-grandmother." "You knew Amelia too?" Eleanor nodded, her gaze returning to the photograph. "Everyone knew Amelia Blackwood. She saw things others didn't. Some called her eccentric, others worse, but she was never wrong." Emma's heart raced. "What do you mean?" "The warnings," Eleanor said simply. "Like with Uncle James, Judge Fontaine. Amelia tried to warn him, said she'd seen death following him in her photographs. He dismissed her, of course. 3 days later, he was dead." "Heart attack," Emma murmured. "That's what the death certificate said," Eleanor replied, with a meaningful look. "But I was there when they found him, his face, the fear in his eyes. Whatever happened to him wasn't peaceful." Eleanor reached into her handbag and withdrew an envelope, yellowed with age. "Margaret sent this back to New Orleans after she left. It was addressed to Amelia, but she refused to open it. After Amelia died, Mr. Thibodeau gave it to me for safekeeping. I think it belongs to you now." Emma accepted the envelope with trembling hands. Her grandmother's handwriting crossed the front. "For Amelia Blackwood. Personal." "Thank you," Emma said, emotion tightening her throat. "You have the gift, don't you?" Eleanor asked suddenly. "Like Amelia. You can see it too. The thing without a face." Emma hesitated, then nodded. "Be careful," Eleanor warned. "The gift can become a burden. It drove a wedge between Amelia and Margaret. Don't let it consume you as it did Amelia." After Eleanor left, Emma retreated to the library with the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a letter dated January 15, 1958, 1 week after Emma's grandfather had died in the train accident. "Mother, you were right. It was there, just as you said it would be. standing on the platform as we boarded the train. I saw it this time, though Robert didn't. I should have listened to you. I should have made him stay, but I was too proud, too angry at your obsession. Now Robert is gone, and I'm left wondering what else you've been right about all these years. I can't come home. There's too much between us now. But know that I understand, finally, what you've carried all this time. Margaret Emma folded the letter carefully, tears blurring her vision. Her grandmother had seen the witness too, had inherited the gift, but rejected it until it was too late. The weight of this family legacy settled on Emma's shoulders, not just the ability to see the witness, but the responsibility that came with it. Outside, thunder rolled across the New Orleans sky, and rain began to fall, washing the city clean once more. The success of Emma's gallery opening had garnered attention from local media. A reporter from the Times-Picayune interviewed her about the exhibition, fascinated by the connection between Amelia's historical photographs and Emma's contemporary work. The story ran with the headline, "Photography Dynasty, Blackwood Legacy Continues in the Digital Age." Dune. The publicity brought a steady stream of visitors to the house-turned-gallery, and Emma found herself settling into life in New Orleans with surprising ease. She'd even begun to form friendships, particularly with Sophia de la Cruz, the owner of a coffee shop on Magazine Street, who shared Emma's interest in local history. "Your great-grandmother used to come into my grandmother's bakery every Sunday," Sophia told her one afternoon, as they sat in the gallery. "Always ordered the same thing, café au lait and an almond croissant. Grandma said she'd bring her camera and sit for hours, watching people." Watching for the witness, Emma thought, but didn't say aloud. "There's a festival in Jackson Square this weekend," Sophia continued. "Local artists, music, food. You should come. Get some new material for your photography." Emma agreed, welcoming the chance to experience the city beyond the confines of the house and its secrets. The festival was vibrant and crowded, with the scent of jambalaya and the sound of jazz filling the air. Emma moved through the throng, camera in hand, capturing candid moments, a trumpet player with his eyes closed in musical ecstasy, children dancing to a brass band, an elderly couple holding hands on a bench. Near the cathedral, Emma photographed a street performer juggling fire batons, the flames creating dramatic patterns against the darkening sky. When she checked the image on her camera's display, her blood ran cold. In the background, barely visible among the crowd of spectators, stood the witness. Emma frantically scanned the actual crowd, but saw nothing unusual. Only in her photograph did the faceless figure appear, watching the fire juggler with its blank visage. "No," Emma whispered, dread pooling in her stomach. She took another photograph of the same scene. Again, the witness appeared, closer now to the performer. Emma pushed through the crowd toward the juggler, her mind racing. A fire accident? An injury to a spectator? Whatever was coming, she had to try to prevent it. "Excuse me?" she called to the juggler as he caught his batons after a particularly impressive toss. "I think you should stop." And the man gave her an annoyed look. "Lady, I'm in the middle of a show." "Please," Emma insisted, lowering her voice. "I think there might be a safety issue." The juggler rolled his eyes, but must have seen the genuine fear in Emma's face. He extinguished his batons and announced a short break, much to the crowd's disappointment. "This better be good," he muttered to Emma. Before she could explain, a commotion erupted nearby. A man had collapsed, clutching his chest. As people rushed to help, Emma noticed something that made her heart skip. The man wore the same red shirt as the juggler, and from where the witness had been standing in her photograph, they would have been indistinguishable. Paramedics arrived quickly, diagnosing a heart attack. "Good thing it happened here and not somewhere isolated," one EMT commented as they loaded the man into the ambulance. The juggler stared at Emma. "How did you know?" "I didn't," she said truthfully. "Not exactly." Later, as Emma and Sophia walked along the riverfront, Emma wrestled with whether to confide in her new friend. The burden of her gift felt suddenly heavier. She had possibly saved a man's life today, but how many warnings would she miss? How many could she realistically act upon? "You seem a million miles away," Sophia observed, bumping Emma's shoulder gently with her own. Emma took a deep breath. "Can I tell you something that will sound completely crazy?" To Emma's surprise, Sophia listened without judgment as Emma explained about the witness, Amelia's journals, and her family's unusual gift. When she finished, Sophia was quiet for a long moment. "New Orleans is full of stories like yours," she finally said. "My abuela would say you have la vista, the sight. In a city this old with this much history, the veil between worlds is thin." "You believe me?" Emma asked, relief washing over her. Sophia shrugged. "I've lived here my whole life. I've seen things that defy explanation. Besides, you just saved that man at the festival. That's proof enough for me." As they continued walking, Emma felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Having someone to share her secret with made it less isolating, less overwhelming. "The question is," Sophia said thoughtfully, "what will you do with this gift? Your great-grandmother spent her life documenting the witness, but rarely intervening. You've already taken a different approach." It was a question Emma had been pondering herself. If the witness was trying to communicate warnings through her, didn't she have a responsibility to act on them? But where did that responsibility end? "I don't know," Emma admitted. "I can't save everyone. I can't even interpret every warning correctly. What if I get it wrong? What if you do nothing and something happens that you could have prevented?" Sophia countered gently. They reached the Moonwalk Promenade, where the Mississippi River stretched wide and dark before them. In the distance, a cruise ship moved slowly upriver, its lights reflecting on the water's surface. Emma raised her camera and took a photograph of the scene. When she checked the display, her breath caught. The witness stood on the deck of the cruise ship, its blank face turned toward her, as if in direct communication. "What is it?" Sophia asked, noticing Emma's expression. Emma showed her the display. Though Sophia couldn't see the witness, she understood what Emma was indicating. "That ship," Sophia said, checking a tourism app on her phone. "It's the River Princess. Departed an hour ago for a 3-day cruise to Memphis." Emma felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders once more. Whatever the witness was warning about would happen on that ship, possibly affecting hundreds of passengers. "I need to make a call," Emma said, already dialing Mr. Thibodeau's number. She would need his help and his connections if she was going to prevent whatever tragedy awaited the River Princess. "A bomb threat?" Mr. Thibodeau repeated skeptically over the phone. "Based on a feeling?" Emma paced along the riverfront, watching the River Princess's lights grow smaller in the distance. "I know how it sounds, but I'm certain. Something is going to happen on that ship, and soon." There was a long pause before Mr. Thibodeau sighed. "My cousin works for the Coast Guard. I can make a call, but Emma, if this is a false alarm—" "It's not," Emma insisted. "Please, just tell them to be thorough. Check the engine room especially." After he hung up, Emma turned to Sophia, who was watching her with a mixture of concern and admiration. "Do you think they'll take it seriously?" Sophia asked. "I don't know," Emma admitted, "but I had to try." They remained by the river for another hour, Emma repeatedly photographing the receding ship, the witness appearing in each image. In the final photograph before the River Princess disappeared from view, the faceless figure stood at the ship's stern, one arm extended toward Emma as if in acknowledgement. The next morning, Emma woke to several missed calls from Mr. Thibodeau. When she returned his call, his voice was tense with excitement. "They found it," he said without preamble, "a faulty fuel line in the engine room that was leaking. The chief engineer said it would have caused a catastrophic fire within hours. The Coast Guard ordered an emergency docking at Baton Rouge." Relief flooded through Emma. "Was anyone hurt?" "No. They evacuated all passengers as a precaution, but they're fine. Inconvenienced but safe. My cousin wants to know how you knew." "Better if he doesn't," Emma replied. "Just tell him I'm grateful they took the warning seriously." After hanging up, Emma sat on the gallery porch, watching the morning light filter through the oak trees. The witness had communicated through her, and she had successfully interpreted its warning. Lives had been saved, but questions lingered. Why her family? Why had this entity attached itself to the Blackwood women through generations? And why did it show itself only through photographs? Emma returned to Amelia's journals, searching for answers. In an entry from 1983, she found a possible clue. I consulted Professor Marceau at Tulane today about the history of spirit photography. He mentioned the theory that photographs capture fragments of time that exist simultaneously with our present. The camera lens acts as a portal between these planes. If this is true, perhaps the witness exists in a dimension where past, present, and future are concurrent. It sees what will be, because to it already is. The theory resonated with Emma. It would explain why the witness appeared only in photographs initially. The camera created a bridge between worlds. But as Amelia's connection to the entity had strengthened over decades, she had begun to see it with her naked eye as well, particularly near the end of her life. Emma wondered if her own connection would follow the same progression. Already, she sometimes sensed the witness's presence before she saw it in her photographs, a sudden chill, a pressure change, a feeling of being observed. That afternoon, Emma received an unexpected visitor. A Coast Guard officer in uniform stood on her doorstep, introducing himself as Lieutenant Commander Jackson, Mr. Thibodeau's cousin. "I wanted to thank you personally," he said once they were seated in the parlor. "That fuel leak would have been disastrous. Over 300 passengers and crew in the middle of the river at night. It doesn't bear thinking about." Emma shifted uncomfortably. "I'm just glad everyone's safe." The officer studied her with shrewd eyes. "This isn't the first time, is it? Your hunches. What did Mr. Thibodeau tell you?" "Nothing specific, just that you have a gift for noticing things others miss." He leaned forward. "Miss Blackwood, I don't particularly care how you knew, but if you ever notice anything else concerning maritime safety, I'd appreciate a direct call." He handed her his card before leaving, and Emma felt the weight of her gift shift again. She was becoming known for her hunches, forming a network of people who took her warnings seriously without questioning their source. It was what Amelia had never achieved: legitimacy and trust. That evening, Emma developed several film photographs she'd taken around the city, working in the attic darkroom that had been Amelia's domain for so many decades. As the images emerged in the developer bath, Emma noticed something unusual. In a photograph of Jackson Square, the witness appeared as expected, a faceless figure among tourists. But unlike previous appearances, this time the entity seemed to be looking directly at the camera, aware of being photographed, and more disturbing still, it wasn't entirely faceless. The suggestion of features had begun to form, the shadow of eyes, the hint of a mouth. Emma hung the photograph to dry, unsettled by this development. Was the witness changing, or was her perception of it evolving? In Amelia's final journal entries, she had written about the entity becoming more distinct, more present. She had believed they were approaching some kind of understanding, a clearer communication. Then she had died before that communication could be completed. Emma wondered what the witness was trying to tell her now. With its almost face turned directly to her camera, was it simply acknowledging their connection, or was there a more urgent message? She wouldn't have to wait long for an answer. The next morning, Emma woke to her phone chiming with a text from Sophia. "Check the news. Historic building collapsed in French Quarter last night. No injuries. Building was empty for renovation." Emma quickly found the story online. An 1830s building on Royal Street had crumbled in the early hours of the morning. Miraculously, no one had been hurt. The collapse had occurred at 3 a.m. when the street was empty, and the building had been unoccupied during renovations. What struck Emma was the building's location, directly across from where she had photographed the witness in Jackson Square the previous day. The entity hadn't been warning about an immediate tragedy, but one that would occur hours later. Emma scrolled through the article, freezing when she reached a historical photograph of the building from the 1920s. A familiar figure stood in the doorway, Amelia Blackwood, recognizable from her portraits, camera in hand. The caption read, "The Royal Street Building in 1925, photographed by noted local photographer Amelia Blackwood during its heyday as the Monteleone banking house." The connection sent a chill through Emma. The witness had appeared in the place where Amelia had once stood, nearly a century earlier. Was it trying to tell her something about Amelia, not just warn about the building collapse? Emma returned to the attic, pulled out the drawer labeled 1925, and searched through the envelopes until she found one marked Monteleone Banking House, March 1925. Inside were several photographs of the now collapsed building, including interior shots of an ornate banking hall. In one image, a group of men in suits stood around a large table, apparently in some kind of business meeting. Emma recognized the witness among them, its faceless form distinct even in the aged photograph. She turned the photo over. Amelia had written on the back, "Board meeting 1 week before the scandal. He knew what was coming." Emma searched online for information about the Monteleone banking house and found references to a 1925 financial scandal in which several prominent New Orleans businessmen had been implicated in fraud. The bank had failed, wiping out the savings of hundreds of families. The pieces began to fit together. The witness had appeared at the bank in 1925, warning of the coming financial disaster. Amelia had photographed it then. Now, nearly a century later, it had appeared to Emma in the same location, warning of the building's physical collapse. Time seemed to fold in on itself, past and present, overlapping through the lens of her camera and the eyes of the witness. Emma called Mr. Thibodeau. "I need everything you can find about the Monteleone banking scandal of 1925, she said without preamble, "and any connection it might have had to my family." "That's quite specific," he replied, sounding intrigued. "May I ask why?" "I think it might be the key to understanding Amelia's obsession with the witness, and mine." Later that day, Mr. Thibodeau arrived with a folder of documents, newspaper clippings, court records, and bank statements he'd unearthed from his law firm's archives. The Monteleone banking house collapse was one of the biggest financial scandals in the city's history, he explained as they spread the materials across the dining room table. The bank president, Victor Monteleone, and several board members were accused of embezzlement and fraud. Hundreds lost their life savings when the bank failed. Emma scanned the yellowed newspaper clippings. One headline stood out, "Judge Blackwood to preside over Monteleone trial." "Edmund Blackwood," Emma murmured. "Amelia's father." Mr. Thibodeau nodded. "He was the presiding judge in the case. By all accounts, he was incorruptible, one of the few honest judges in an era rife with corruption." Another clipping reported the unexpected death of Judge Blackwood midway through the trial, a stroke that had left his daughter Amelia an orphan at 17. The case had been reassigned, and ultimately, most of the defendants had received minimal sentences. "So my great-great-grandfather died during the trial of corrupt bankers," Emma said slowly, "and Amelia was orphaned." "Not just orphaned," Mr. Thibodeau corrected, pointing to another document. "Left destitute, the Blackwoods had all their money in Monteleone's bank. When it failed, they lost everything except this house, which had been in the family for generations." Emma felt a cold certainty settle over her. The witness appeared to Amelia before her father's death, didn't it? In photographs she took of the bank. It was trying to warn her about both the financial scandal and her father's death. And she couldn't understand the warning in time, Mr. Thibodeau concluded. That would explain her lifelong obsession with documenting the entity's appearances. Emma gathered the materials, her mind racing. "The witness has been connected to my family for generations, trying to communicate warnings. Amelia spent her life trying to understand its messages, but she could never fully interpret them in time. And now it's communicating with you, Mr. Thibodeau said softly, but you're succeeding where Amelia failed. You're understanding its warnings and acting on them. That night, Emma dreamed again of Josephine Blackwood, her spiritualist ancestor. They stood together in the attic studio, surrounded by photographs spanning more than a century. The witness was my guide, Josephine said, arranging images in a timeline. It came to me first during the Civil War, warning of battles before they occurred. I couldn't save everyone, but I saved many. Why our family? Emma asked. Josephine smiled sadly. We have the sight, passed down through generations. But the sight alone isn't enough. The witness needs more. It needs someone who can bridge worlds, who can translate its warnings into action. Amelia tried, Emma said. She saw, but fear clouded her understanding. The trauma of her father's death, the scandal that ruined her family, it tainted her relationship with the witness. She saw it as harbinger of doom rather than messenger of warning. And me? What does it want from me? Josephine placed a photograph in Emma's hands, one Emma had never seen before. It showed the exterior of the house on Prytania Street, dated 1907. In the foreground stood a woman who resembled Amelia, holding a baby. The witness stood beside them, its hand reaching toward the child. It wants what it has always wanted, Josephine said, to protect, to warn, to be understood. Emma woke with the dream vivid in her mind. She went to the cabinet in the attic and pulled open the drawer labeled 1907. Inside, she found the photograph from her dream, exactly as she had seen it. On the back was written, Catherine with Amelia, age 3 months. It watches over her already. The baby was Amelia. The woman was Catherine Blackwood, Emma's great-great-grandmother. And the witness had been present from the beginning of Amelia's life, just as it now was in Emma's. The cycle continued, generation after generation, but Emma was determined to understand it fully, to complete what Amelia had started and forge a new relationship with the entity that had watched over her family for more than a century. Over the next week, Emma immersed herself in research, piecing together the complex history of her family's connection to the witness. She created a timeline on the library wall, connecting photographs across decades with red string, mapping the entity's appearances against family events and historical tragedies. Patterns emerged. The witness appeared more frequently during times of crisis. The Civil War, the 1918 influenza pandemic, the Great Depression, Hurricane Katrina. Its appearances clustered around Blackwood women who possessed the sight, Josephine, Catherine, Amelia, and now Emma. But there was a gap in the timeline. Margaret, Emma's grandmother, had rejected her inheritance, fleeing New Orleans after her husband's death. The witness had followed her briefly, appearing in the photograph Amelia had taken of the train platform. But after that, there were no documented sightings until Emma arrived in New Orleans. Had the entity waited, dormant, for another Blackwood woman with the gift to return to the house on Prytania Street? Emma's phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Lieutenant Commander Jackson. Miss Blackwood, I hope I'm not disturbing you. I wanted to let you know your warning about the River Princess has attracted some attention. My superiors are interested in consulting with you on certain security matters. Emma hesitated. What kind of security matters? Nothing classified, he assured her. But your insight could be valuable for identifying potential safety issues in the port and on the river. Purely advisory. It was a chance to use her gift officially to help prevent tragedies before they occurred. Amelia had never had such an opportunity. She had been dismissed as eccentric at best, unstable at worst. I'd be happy to help, Emma said, but I work in my own way. I can't guarantee results. Understood. We're interested in results, not methods. After arranging a meeting for the following day, Emma returned to her timeline. One photograph in particular kept drawing her attention, the 1907 image of baby Amelia with the witness. Unlike most appearances where the entity stood apart, observing, here it reached toward Amelia, almost protective. The distinction felt significant. The witness wasn't simply a harbinger of doom or a passive observer. It was trying to intervene, to protect the Blackwood women who could perceive it. Emma gathered her camera and descended to the parlor, which still functioned as her gallery. She set up a tripod in the center of the room and began a time-lapse series, photographing the empty space at 5-minute intervals. Hours passed. Emma reviewed the images, finding nothing unusual in the first dozen. But in the 13th photograph, the witness had appeared standing by the fireplace. In the 14th, it had moved closer to the camera. By the 20th image, it stood directly before the lens, its featureless face filling the frame. Emma's heart raced as she checked the most recent photograph, taken just minutes earlier. The witness remained, but now its face was no longer blank. Instead, it bore the features of a woman, indistinct but recognizable. Amelia Blackwood. Emma gasped, nearly dropping her camera. The witness had taken on Amelia's face. Was it trying to tell her something about her great-grandmother, or was it somehow becoming Amelia? As if in answer to her unspoken question, the temperature in the parlor plummeted. The chandelier swayed gently, though there was no breeze. And in the mirror above the fireplace, Emma saw not her own reflection, but Amelia's, exactly as she appeared in her portrait upstairs. "Great-grandmother," Emma whispered. The reflection moved independently of Emma, raising a hand in greeting. Its lips moved, forming words Emma couldn't hear. Emma raised her camera and took another photograph. When she checked the display, she found text superimposed over the image. "The veil is thinning." Understanding dawned. The witness wasn't a separate entity that had attached itself to her family. It was family. Blackwood women from the past, reaching through time to warn their descendants of coming dangers. Josephine, the spiritualist who had first developed the sight. Catherine, who had died protecting Amelia during a yellow fever outbreak. Amelia herself, who had spent her life documenting the witness's appearances, unknowing that she would one day become part of the phenomenon she studied. They existed outside of linear time, seeing past, present, and future simultaneously. Their warnings came through photographs, because the camera, as Professor Marceau had theorized, created a bridge between dimensions. Emma felt a profound sense of connection to these women across generations. They had carried the gift, sometimes as a burden, sometimes as a blessing. Now it was her turn. The next day, Emma met with Lieutenant Commander Jackson and his superiors at the Coast Guard station. They were polite but skeptical, clearly humoring Mr. Thibodeau's cousin, despite their doubts about Emma's intuition. "We appreciate your assistance with the River Princess situation," said Captain Reynolds, a stern woman with silver hair. "But I want to be clear. We rely on hard data and established protocols, not hunches." Emma nodded, understanding their position. "I don't expect you to change your procedures. I'm simply offering an additional perspective." They showed her maps of the port, schedules of ship movements, security protocols. Emma listened attentively, but her attention was drawn to a large photograph on the wall, an aerial view of the Mississippi River winding through New Orleans. As she studied it, the image seemed to shift, revealing the witness, now with Amelia's indistinct features, standing on the Crescent City Connection Bridge. "That bridge," Emma said suddenly, interrupting Captain Reynolds' explanation of container inspection procedures. "When was it last inspected?" The captain blinked in surprise. "The Crescent City Connection? It's not under our jurisdiction. That's Department of Transportation. But I believe routine inspections are conducted quarterly." "It needs to be inspected now," Emma insisted. "Today." The officers exchanged glances. Lieutenant Commander Jackson leaned forward. "Can you tell us why, Miss Blackwood?" Emma considered how to explain. These pragmatic, data-driven professionals wouldn't understand her connection to the witness, to her ancestors reaching through time. "Concrete deterioration on the western support," she said finally. "Possibly from water damage after the last heavy rain. It's visible from certain angles. It was a gamble, but one based on the witness's warning and her growing trust in the family gift. Captain Reynolds made a call to her counterpart at the Department of Transportation, carefully framing the concern as a potential structural issue noticed by a consultant. By late afternoon, inspection teams were examining the bridge. The call came as Emma was having dinner with Sophia at a small restaurant in the Marigny. Mr. Thibodeau's voice was tinged with awe. "They found exactly what you described. Water damage compromising a support structure on the western span. The chief engineer said it would have failed catastrophically within weeks. They're closing the westbound lanes tonight for emergency repairs." Emma closed her eyes, relief washing over her. "Thank you for letting me know." "Emma," Mr. Thibodeau said hesitantly, "I don't know how you're doing this, but you're saving lives. Amelia would be proud." After dinner, Emma and Sophia walked back to the house on Prytania Street. The night was warm, the air heavy with the scent of jasmine and the distant sound of jazz. "So the witness is actually your ancestors?" Sophia asked, trying to understand Emma's explanation. "Like, your great-grandmother is reaching through time to warn you about things?" "It sounds crazy, I know," Emma admitted, "but it makes sense. The Blackwood women have always had the sight, the ability to perceive things others can't. When they die, they transcend linear time, seeing past, present, and future simultaneously. They try to warn those of us still living about coming dangers. And they can only communicate through photographs? Mostly, the camera creates a bridge between dimensions. But as my connection strengthens, I'm starting to perceive them directly, like Amelia did near the end of her life. They reached the house, its facade glowing warmly in the light of the antique street lamps. Emma had come to love this place that had seemed so foreign just weeks ago. It was more than a house. It was the anchor for her family's unusual gift, the place where generations of Blackwood women had lived and died and continued to watch over their descendants. "What will you do now?" Sophia asked as they stood on the sidewalk. "Will you keep working with the Coast Guard?" Emma nodded. "And other agencies too, if they'll have me. I can help prevent tragedies before they happen. It's what the witness, what my ancestors, have been trying to do all along." "And the house? Will you stay in New Orleans?" Emma looked up at the grand old Victorian with its gallery porch and gingerbread trim, now restored to its former beauty. "Yes, this is where I belong, where we all belong." That night, Emma developed one final photograph in Amelia's darkroom, a self-portrait she had taken earlier that day. As the image emerged in the chemical bath, Emma watched with a sense of peace as her own face appeared, clear and sharp. And behind her stood not one figure but three, Josephine, Catherine, and Amelia, their faces distinct now, their expressions serene. They were no longer the faceless witness, but family, reaching across time to protect their own. Emma hung the photograph to dry and whispered into the quiet attic, "I see you now. I understand." The house settled around her with a familiar creak of old wood, and Emma felt for the first time since arriving in New Orleans truly at home. In the decades that followed, the Blackwood women would become known for their uncanny ability to predict and prevent disasters throughout New Orleans and beyond. Few would understand the source of their gift, the unique connection between past and present, the camera that bridged dimensions, the love that transcended death itself. But in the old house on Prytania Street, the photographs would continue to reveal what others couldn't see, the guardians who watched over their family, the witnesses to time itself. And in each generation, a Blackwood woman with blue eyes would carry the gift forward, never alone, always protected by those who had come before.